The rain was falling softly over Greenhaven Station when an alarm sounded in an old seed vault. Inside, a human farmer found 5 starving strangers on the floor, but they were not reaching for food. Thank you for listening. If this story moves you, a like, comment, or subscribe would mean a lot. Now step into a quiet place where one small seed may carry more than anyone understands. Humanity gave seeds to the alien farmers. The Empire tried to starve. Luke Harlan heard the alarm before he saw the rain. It came as a soft pulse through the wall speaker of his small office at Greenhaven Station. 3 notes, then a pause, then 3 notes again. Not a fire alarm, not a breach alarm, just a motion warning from Seed Vault 2, the old storage wing near the southern fields. Outside the window, midnight rain slid down the glass in silver lines. Beyond it, the emergency fields lay dark and flat, covered in rows of winter cover crops and low greenhouses that glowed faintly under their heat lamps. Greenhaven was never truly asleep. Somewhere on the station grounds, pumps were always moving water. Fans were always breathing warm air through seedlings. Machines were always drying grain for some settlement that had lost its harvest to drought, war, or bad weather on a world too young to forgive mistakes. Luke set down his coffee. He had been reviewing shipping numbers for a colony on Mars when the alarm sounded. The kind of numbers nobody loved, but everybody needed. How many tons of seed potatoes could be spared? How many crates of drought wheat had passed inspection? How many irrigation heads had cracked in transit? Numbers were never just numbers at Greenhaven. A wrong number meant hungry children 6 months later. The alarm pulsed again. Luke stood, pulled his field jacket from the chair, and checked the tablet mounted near the door. Seed Vault 2. Interior motion. No forced entry listed. No heat spike. No chemical warning. He frowned. No forced entry meant one of 3 things. A sensor fault, a staff mistake, or someone would come in through an old service lock that should have been sealed years ago. Luke took the flashlight from the emergency rack. He did not call. Armed security first. Greenhaven had security, but Luke had worked enough relief zones to know the difference between danger and desperation was sometimes no wider than a locked door. He alerted night control with 2 taps, just enough to leave a record. Then he went out into the rain. Seed Vault 2 stood beyond the southern walkway, half hidden behind rows of wet barley and plastic-covered soil beds. Its old service entrance faced away from the main station lights. Luke saw the door before he reached it. It was not broken. It was open by less than an inch. He slowed, kept the flashlight low, and stepped inside. The vault smelled of cold metal, dry paper, and stored life. Shelves rose on both sides, stacked with sealed tins, paper packets, nutrient clay, soil cultures, and field kits marked for emergency use. Nothing looked disturbed at first. Then Luke heard it. A scrape. A breath. The smallest sound of fingers moving across wood. He moved down the aisle slowly. His boots made no effort to hide themselves. People hiding in food storage were often more afraid of silence than noise. "I know you are in here," he said. "Do not run. Nobody needs to get hurt." The scraping stopped. Luke turned the corner. For one moment, he did not understand what he was seeing. 5 alien figures knelt on the floor between the seed shelves. They were thin, all of them, long-limbed and narrow-shouldered, with skin the color of dry copper leaves. Their clothing looked like field wraps, patched and dusty, still carrying the pale grit of another world. 2 adults held their hands open, frozen in the act of gathering something from the cracks between the floorboards. Seeds. Not food tins. Not medicine. Not water bottles from the relief crate less than 10 feet away. Seeds. A woman rose first. She moved stiffly, like someone expecting a blow but refusing to bow for it. Her face was angular, her dark eyes bright in the flashlight beam. She put herself between Luke and the others. "We did not take the food," she said in careful English. Her accent was soft but clear. "We did not break the sealed tins." Luke lowered the flashlight slightly so it was not in her eyes. "I can see that." Her fingers closed around 3 small seeds. "Then let us leave with these." Behind her, an old male clutched a small cloth bag to his chest. A child crouched beside him, younger than the rest, holding one seed near her ear, as if listening for a heartbeat. Luke looked at the food crates again. Standard emergency packs, grain meal, protein bars, salt tablets, water pouches, enough to keep 5 starving people alive for days. "You broke into a food station," he said, and ignored the food. The woman swallowed. Pride fought with exhaustion in her face. Pride was winning, but only barely. "Food ends," she said. "Seeds remember." The child looked up at Luke. Her eyes were too large for her face. "This one is dead," she whispered, showing him the seed she had listened to. It does not answer. Luke had heard many things in relief work. Threats, prayers, lies told from fear, truth told too late. He had seen people steal water filters, medicine, fuel, blankets, even soil. He had never seen starving people kneel in a warehouse and pick seeds out of dust while full rations sat within reach. He put the flashlight on a shelf, beam turned toward the ceiling, and raised both hands so they could see them. "My name is Luke Harlan," he said. "I run field operations here." "Who are you?" The woman hesitated. Her eyes moved to the old male, then to the child. "Maraven," she said. "These are Varrin farmers. From Astorvale." Luke knew the name only vaguely. Astorvale was not on Greenhaven's main aid list. It sat in Odrin's space, far beyond the regular Earth corridors. Rich mineral belt. Poor agricultural frontier. The kind of place that appeared in trade reports only when someone important wanted the land. "The Odrin Empire has relief channels," Luke said. Mara's mouth tightened. "The Odrin Empire has forms." That answer told him enough to be careful. Luke tapped the comm on his collar. "Night Control, this is Harlan. I have 5 unidentified arrivals in Seed Vault 2. No weapons visible. Medical assessment needed, not tactical response. Tell Helen Price I need her awake." Mara stiffened at the word response. Luke saw it and shook his head. "Nobody is taking you out of here in cuffs. Unless you make me regret trusting my first instinct." "We are not thieves," Mara said. "No," Luke said, looking at the seeds in her fist. "I do not think you are." The old male rose with effort. "I am Orensay," he said, "keeper of the last Vale seed." His voice was dry and rough, like soil after too much sun. He opened the cloth bag, just enough for Luke to see a handful of dark seeds wrapped in gray fiber. Mara turned sharply. "Oren, they will know soon enough," Oren said. "Better from us." Luke stepped closer, but not too close. "Last seed of what?" "Our home," Oren said. The child beside him pressed against his leg. Mara rested one hand on the child's shoulder. "Nemi Ven," she said. "My brother's daughter." Luke nodded to the child. She did not smile. She kept listening to the dead seed, as though it might change its mind. "What happened on Astorvale?" Luke asked. Mara looked toward the locked seed tins around them. Her voice, when it came, was steady enough that Luke respected her more for the effort. "The Sorna Flats fed our settlements for generations. We grew grain in salt soil. We grew root crops where the old mines poisoned the ground. Then the Empire found deep metal onto the flats. They said the land was no longer stable for farming. They said we needed relocation. And you refused. We asked for the soil tests." Mara gave a bitter, tired smile. "Then our water licenses failed. Our seed permits expired. Our grain shipments were delayed. The old seed would not open under the new law codes. They called it a legal supply correction." Luke felt something cold move under his ribs. "You're telling me they locked your seed stock?" "Not only ours," Oren said. "Every licensed seed in the district. Every root line we had stored in public vaults. Every irrigation schedule. Every soil culture. The Empire did not burn our fields. It taught our fields to stay dead." Luke looked at the seed crates. He knew the technology in broad terms. Many galactic seed systems were engineered with licensing locks to prevent invasive spread, or so the companies claimed. Seeds that would not germinate without a signal, a chemical trigger, or a registered soil culture. On paper, it was about safety. In practice, the people who controlled the license controlled hunger. He looked back at Mara. "How'd you get here?" "By cargo shadows," she said. "By work holds. By lies. By leaving people behind." The child closed her fingers around the dead seed. "My mother stayed for the old fields." Silence settled in the vault. Rain ticked against the roof. The refrigeration units hummed around them, preserving life for worlds that had never once thanked Earth properly. Footsteps sounded near the entrance a few minutes later. Helen Price arrived with a medical tech behind her, her gray coat pulled over sleep clothes and her hair tied back in a hard knot. She looked from Luke to the Varrin, then to the seeds scattered across the floor. "Luke," she said carefully, "tell me you did not just invite an Odrin refugee claim into a seed vault." "I have not invited anyone anywhere yet," Luke said, "but I am not sending hungry farmers back to an empire that starved them by paperwork." Helen looked at the Varrin. Her expression softened for half a second before the administrator returned. "Mara Ven," she said, "Orin say, the Odrin Empire has a biological property flag on your community." Mara closed her eyes, as if she had expected those words and still hated hearing them. Helen continued, "If we shelter you, Odrin can claim we are holding licensed agricultural material." "They call us material now?" Mara asked. Helen did not answer quickly enough. Luke did. "Not here," he said. Everyone turned toward him. Luke picked up one of the seeds from the floor. A small thing. Brown, plain, almost weightless. Yet 5 starving people had crossed half the known corridors for something like it. "Not in this building," Luke said. "Not while I'm standing in it." Helen exhaled through her nose. "Luke, I know. You do not. If this becomes a council issue, Greenhaven could lose access to half our galactic agricultural channels." Luke looked at the Varrin again. At Mara, trying not to sway from hunger. At Orin, protecting a cloth bag like a heart. At Nemi, listening to a dead seed because someone had taught her that seeds had voices before anyone taught her safety. "Then we start with what we can defend," Luke said. "Medical care, quarantine screening, temporary agricultural assessment. No political declaration." Helen stared at him. "You're building a shelter in the space between rules." "Rules have plenty of space when powerful people need it," Luke said. "Let us use some for the hungry." For a long moment, Helen said nothing. Then she turned to the medical tech. "Check them for exposure, dehydration, and transport sickness. Security stays outside. No cuffs." Mara's shoulders lowered a fraction. Luke handed her the seed from the floor. "Keep it," he said. She looked at him as though she had forgotten how to receive something without losing something else. "It may be dead," she said. "Then we learn why," Luke said. "If it is alive, we learn what it needs." Nemi looked up. "You can do that." Luke glanced toward the dark fields beyond the vault wall. "At Greenhaven," he said, "that is the work." By morning, the Varrin were behind medical glass. Not because they were prisoners, but because Helen needed a quarantine record clean enough to survive Odrin scrutiny. Rachel Bloom, Greenhaven's lead plant biologist, stood beside Luke in the corridor and watched them through the glass. "You are telling me," Rachel said after Luke briefed her, "that an empire puts subscription locks on a staple crop? I'm telling you they turned germination into a border checkpoint." Rachel stared through the glass at the Varrin. "That is not agriculture. That is a hostage system." "Yes." Helen joined them, tablet in hand. She looked worse in daylight. Official messages had already begun to arrive. "The Odrin consular net has flagged missing biological assets," she said. "Helix Grain Authority is asking whether Earth has received any unlicensed Varrin seed lines." Rachel blinked. "They asked fast. They knew where to look," Luke said. Helen's eyes moved to the Varrin behind the glass. "I can authorize a 72-hour humanitarian hold. Medical grounds. After that, we need a category." "Refugees," Rachel said. Helen shook her head. "Odrin does not recognize them as refugees. They are listed as participants in a relocation dispute." Mara turned her head from inside the room. The glass was not soundproof enough. "Dispute," she said. Helen closed her eyes briefly. Luke opened the door and stepped inside. Mara stood, blanket falling from one shoulder. "A dispute is when 2 sides hold equal bread." "I know," Luke said. "Do you?" He met her anger without flinching. "I know enough to ask you how you want to be named in our records." That stopped her. Luke continued, "If we write thief, Odrin wins before the first hearing. If we write refugees, they fight the category. If we write farmers under emergency agricultural protection, we can keep you here while we assess seed viability." Mara's face changed slowly. It was not trust. Not yet, but it was recognition. Farmers, she said. Right, farmers. So Greenhaven did. By noon, Luke had moved the Varrin out of the medical wing and into the South Greenhouse Annex. Not as prisoners, not as patients, but as a work group under emergency agricultural protection. Helen signed the temporary order with the look of a woman placing her hand inside a machine she did not trust. You have 3 days before this becomes bigger than us, she told Luke. Then we used the 3 days. Greenhaven South Annex had been built for crops from difficult worlds. Adjustable light, sealed soil bays, nutrient fog, heat panels, water recapture, and soil beds deep enough for root systems that like to argue with gravity. It had saved harvests from 6 planets and 2 lunar colonies. Luke had seen dead-looking seeds open there after scientists had already given up. He had also seen living seeds fail. He did not promise the Varrin anything. That mattered. Mara watched him lay out the work tables, soil trays, moisture sensors, and seed envelopes. Oren held the cloth bag against his chest, refusing to put it down. Nemi stood beside Rachel, fascinated by the greenhouse controls, but careful not to touch anything without permission. Luke placed a tray of earth wheat, beans, drought rice, and hardy root seeds on the central table. These are not replacements, he said. They're baselines. We learn how your seed reacts to earth soil, earth water, and earth light. We do not spend your last seed until we. No more. Mara's eyes narrowed. You decide that? No, Luke said. You do. I recommend it. Oren studied him. Many officials recommend until choice disappears. Luke nodded. Then let us make the choice visible. He took an empty lockbox from the supply cabinet and set on the table. He keyed it open and stepped back. Your original seed stays in your custody. If you want a station seal on the box, so nobody can take it without leaving a record, I will provide one. If you do not, I will not touch it. Oren looked at the box for a long time. You would leave the last seed with an old man? It has been with an old man this long, Luke said. Seems safer than most governments. Rachel gave a small cough that might have been a laugh. Mara's mouth moved toward a smile and stopped before it became one. Oren placed the cloth bag inside the box. Luke sealed it with a transparent band that would show any break. Then he handed Oren the key chip. Only then did work begin. On the second day, Rachel adjusted the light spectrum closer to Aster Vale's redder sun. Luke changed the soil mix, cutting back nitrogen and adding mineral clay from Greenhaven's arid beds. Oren shook each seed near his ear before they planted it. He sorted them with care, not by size or color, but by something he called inner weight. Nemi listened too. This one remembers water, she said. Rachel looked to Luke. Luke shrugged. Mark it. Mara worked beside them in silence for most of the morning. Her hands were precise. She did not waste water. She pressed soil around each seed as if closing a wound. A young Varrin male named Tovin broke down when the 5th tray failed. He stepped back from the bench and struck the wall with the heel of his hand. We are farmers, he said, voice shaking. We were farmers. Mara turned toward him, but Luke reached the tray first. He lifted one of the failed seeds gently with tweezers. Look at the casing, he said. Tovin glared at him. Luke held the seed under the magnifier. It did not die because your hands forgot. It died because the outer coat hardened before the root could break through. That is not shame. That is a condition. Tovin breathed hard. Luke pointed to the moisture record. Too much mineral shock. We changed the soak. We try again. You speak as if failure is only a number. No, Luke said. Failure is a body count if you ignore it. If you study it, sometimes it becomes a map. Mara watched him, and for the first time, something in her face eased. Late that afternoon, tray 7 opened. It was only a white thread at first, thin as a hair, pushing through the casing and into earth soil. Rachel saw it before anyone else and stopped breathing for 3 full seconds. Then Nemi saw it. It answered, she whispered. The room gathered around the tray, afraid to move too close. Oren covered his mouth with both hands. Mara stared at the root like a person afraid that hope might vanish if named too loudly. Helen's tablet chimed. She read the message once. Her face went pale with anger. What is it? Luke asked. Helen looked at the root, then at the Varrin. Helix Grain Authority has filed a biological property notice. They claim any Varrin origin germination outside Odrin space is a legal propagation of licensed seed. Mara's hand tightened on the table until her knuckles darkened. Nemi looked from the root to Luke. Will they kill it? Luke looked at the tiny white thread pushing into earth soil. Not today, he said. That afternoon, Varrin put Greenhaven on the galactic feeds. Her voice came through Helen's office screen smooth as polished glass. Earth officials have refused to confirm reports that stolen biological assets from Astorvale are being cultivated at Greenhaven Station. The Varrin group involved has been described by Odrin sources as a non-compliant relocation cell with a history of agricultural sabotage. Helen muted the screen before Vera could say more. Rachel crossed her arms. Agricultural sabotage. They mean planting. They mean planting without permission, Helen said. Mara stood near the window, looking out at the greenhouses. On Astorvale, permission became another word for hunger. Luke had spent the afternoon building a backup irrigation line from old lunar colony parts. The shipment of new emitters had been delayed in orbit for extended inspection. He was tired, damp from pipe, water, and angry in a way that made him careful. How many Varrin are still on Astorvale? He asked. Mara did not turn from the window. In the Sorna Flats? Maybe 12,000. Maybe less. We do not know who left, who hid, who took the relocation rations, and never reached the camps. And your fields? Still there, Orin said from his chair. Waiting. For what? For liars to stop calling them dead. Luke looked at Rachel. She had been quiet all day, studying the soil readings from Tray 7. Now, she turned the tablet toward him. The soil around the root is changing. Luke took the tablet. At first, he thought the sensor had drifted. Then he saw the pattern. Salt binding decreased. Trace toxins down. Microbial activity up. That cannot happen this fast, he said. Rachel nodded. I know. Orin leaned forward. It can. Everyone looked at him. The old farmer's hand rested on the lockbox holding the last seed. Before Helix came, before Odrin licenses, our oldest root lines were planted after mining. They drank the bitter ground. They held poison in the lower roots and left the topsoil soft enough for grain. Mara stared at him. You told me those were burial songs. They were farming songs, Orin said. After enough hunger, people remember songs as funerals. Luke felt the room shift around that sentence. If the Varrin plants could restore damaged soil, then the Empire's claim that the Sorna Flats were no longer viable might be false. Worse than false. Manufactured. He went back through the records Helen had forwarded. Odrin's soil collapse reports. Relocation orders. Yield failures. Seed permit revocations. Each piece looked dull and legal alone. Together, they formed a shape. A field killed on paper. A people starved by clean hands. We need more data, Luke said. Mara turned on him. You need more proof? I need enough that they cannot bury it in one sentence. They buried us in thousands of sentences. Luke stepped toward her. And if we shout before the plants set seed, they burn the only witness that can grow. Mara's anger hit that wall and held there. Rachel spoke softly. A living field is harder to dismiss than our accusation. Mara looked at Tray 7. The root was tiny, too tiny to carry the weight of a people. But it was carrying it anyway. Before sunset, Save and Krell contacted Greenhaven. Helen took the call in the operations room. Luke stood beside her. Mara insisted on being present. Helen hesitated, then allowed it. Not as a favor. As a correction. Save and Krell appeared on the wall screen in formal Odrin gray. His face was narrow, calm, and almost kind in the way a locked door could seem kind if polished well. Administrator Price, he said. Earth's reputation for emergency relief is well known. I trust this matter is a misunderstanding. Helen's smile had no warmth. That depends on which matter you mean. The unauthorized sheltering of Varrin relocation participants. The possession of licensed seed stock. The possibility of unlawful propagation. Mara stepped forward. We are not participants. We are farmers. Krell's eyes moved to her with mild surprise, as if a chair had spoken. Motiven, you were listed as missing from Transport Group 17. Because I ran. Because you violated relocation procedure. Because relocation procedure starved my village. Krell sighed. Administrator Price, this is why such conversations are best handled between recognized authorities. Luke spoke before Helen could. Funny, he said. Hunger seems to recognize her just fine. Krell's eyes shifted to Luke. And you are? Luke Harlan. Field operations. Ah, the farmer. The farmer, Luke said. Krell smiled slightly. Then you understand property. Seed must be tracked. Cultivation must be licensed. Without order, agriculture becomes contamination. Luke thought of Nemi listening to a dead seed. Without seed, he said, order becomes a prettier word for famine. Helen gave him a look that meant be careful. Krell's smile faded by 1 degree. Earth is not being accused of malice. Yet, return the Varrin individuals and all associated biological material. The Odrin Empire will consider the matter contained. Contained, Mara said. Krell looked at her again. You will be fed under relocation authority. For how long? She asked. Until processed. And after, work assignments are determined by. Neat. Our fields are no longer viable. Luke watched Krell's face when he said it. No anger, no grief, no uncertainty. Too smooth. The plants in our greenhouse disagree, Luke said. Helen closed her eyes. Krell grew still. Pardon, nothing official, Luke said. Just a farmer's observation. Krell leaned closer to the screen. Mr. Harlan, I advise you not to confuse germination with legitimacy. Luke smiled without humor. I advise you not to confuse a license with life. The call ended with 3 formal warnings and 1 private threat buried under diplomatic language. By morning, Greenhaven's next shipment of irrigation membranes was blocked. By afternoon, 2 partner colonies reported delays in Earth aid routing due to Council review of agricultural compliance. By evening, Varrin had a new headline. Earth farmer risks Galactic Food Network for seed thieves. Luke read it once, then went back to the greenhouse. The plant in tray 7 had opened 2 tiny leaves. The second Varrin tray sprouted near a line of earth clover used for soil repair. Then the third. Rachel tested the soil around those roots and found the same pattern. Toxic compounds binding, salt reducing, microbes waking. This is not just survival, she said. This is restoration. Oren's eyes filled with tears he did not let fall. The old flats used to smell after rain, like iron and green bread. Mara looked away. That evening, Luke found her outside greenhouse 4, standing under the dim lamps with rain mist collecting in her hair. You should sleep, he said. So should you. I am from Earth. We pretend coffee is sleep. She almost smiled. For a while they watched Rachel and Oren through the glass, bent over soil trays like 2 priests of different religions finding the same altar. My father stayed on Astor Vale, Mara said. He told me to take Nemi. He said someone had to carry seed, and someone had to carry witness. I thought he gave me the easier task. Luke said nothing. He is probably dead. Probably is not certainly. That is a cruel comfort. It is the only honest kind I have. Mara looked at him then. Why are you doing this? Luke could have said because it was right. He could have said because Earth had laws of its own. He could have said because he hated bullies with polished manners. All true. None enough. My grandfather farmed land that flooded every spring, he said. 1 year the river took everything. House, barn, seed, old tools. People came from 3 towns over with seed bags and pickup trucks. No forms. No species. Just seed. Mara listened. He told me later that food kept them alive. Luke said, but seed made them stand up again. She looked back into the greenhouse. And if helping us makes Earth kneel? Luke did not answer quickly. Then we find out how strong our knees are. The attack came 2 nights later. It was not dramatic at first. No explosion. No siren. Just Rachel's voice through Luke's calm, too flat to be calm. South Waterline is reading sterile. Luke sat up from the cot in his office. Sterile how? No microbes. No nutrient trace. And Luke, the Varrin trays are dropping. He was moving before she finished. By the time he reached the annex, the air smelled wrong. Too clean. Greenhouses should smell of wet leaves, warm soil, mineral tanks, and life. This smelled like glass after disinfectant. Rachel stood at the main water panel, hands flying over controls. Mara and Tovin were already inside Bay 3, lifting trays from the lower racks. Leaves that had been firm at dusk, now curled inward. Root alarms blinked yellow across the display. Luke took one look and started giving orders. Shut the main line. Now. Rachel, isolate south tanks. Mara, no bare hands in the water. Tovin, get the children out of Bay 3 and Bay 4. Nemi, stay with Orin. Nemi stood near the door, face white. I can help. You help by breathing clean air until I know what is in that water. She looked ready to argue. Mara said one word in Varrin, and Nemi went. Luke pulled gloves from the emergency box and dropped to his knees beside the first bed. He pressed 2 fingers into the soil. Too wet. Slick texture. No earth smell. The microbes were dying. Try melt, Rachel said from the panel. Or something close. It breaks germination chemistry. How did it enter? Service intake. Luke's jaw tightened. That intake is locked. Was. Mara looked up sharply. Odrin. Maybe, Luke said. Blame later. Roots now. He moved fast. Years of field work took over. He had seen fungus take a rice trial in Panama. Seen water salinity kill a colony's first orchard on Ganymede. Seen panic waste more food than drought. Rachel. Route from reserve tanks through the old lunar filters. Cut flow by half. We save what we can, not what we wish we could. Mara, your people know these roots. I need dead, dying, and possible separated in 10 minutes. 10, she asked. 8, if you can. Her eyes sharpened. Varrin, hands to roots. They moved. The greenhouse became controlled chaos. Earth staff hauled clean trays. Varrin farmers lifted plants with surgical care. Rachel bypassed 3 locked valves by crawling under the main panel and swearing at machinery in a low, steady voice. Luke cut away contaminated mats and set up a wash station using emergency drinking water from the relief stores. Helen arrived in a coat over pajamas, security behind her. Tell me this was an accident, she said. No, Luke said. The word landed hard. Helen looked at the dying plants. Council inspectors are asking for access. Now! Now! Luke stood, gloves dripping. They can wait. They have authority. So, does a fire door when a building is burning? Helen stared at him, then turned to security. No one enters the annex without my clearance. One guard blinked. Administrator? You heard me. Luke went back to the beds. They worked until dawn. They saved less than half. When the sun came up, Bay 3 looked like a battlefield made of soil. Dead plants lay in gray bins. Surviving trays stood under emergency lamps, roots washed, leaves trembling. Orin sat on a stool with his head bowed. Nemi stood beside him, both hands around the sealed lockbox. Mara walked the rows without speaking. She touched each dead plant once. Luke wanted to give her comfort and had none that would not insult the dead. Then Helen's tablet chimed. She read the message. Every person in the greenhouse seemed to feel it before she spoke. The Galactic Council has issued a containment order, Helen said. Greenhaven is to suspend all Varrin propagation and prepare for destruction of disputed biological material. Rachel said, they want us to burn the survivors. They want us to sterilize the site. Mara looked at Luke. The anger in her face was gone. That was worse. It left only the old exhaustion of someone who had been right about the universe too many times. Now your loss sounds like theirs, she said. Helen flinched. Luke removed his gloves slowly. No, he said. Not yet. Helen lowered her voice. Luke, listen to me. If we refuse, Greenhaven can be removed from the Galactic Relief Exchange. Not just this station. Earth programs using Council corridors could be delayed. Some of our shipments are already under review. How many? 6 colony deliveries. 2 medical crop programs. 1 famine response. The room went quiet. That was the blade hidden in the order. Not just Greenhaven. Not just Luke's job. Other hungry people on other worlds could pay for this decision. Mara heard it too. She stepped back. We will leave. Orin looked up. Mara, we will not make Earth starve others for us. Luke turned to her. Leaving will not protect them. You do not know that. I know men like Krell. If this works once, it becomes policy. Every poor district with licensed seed becomes a throat with a hand around it. Mara shook her head. Easy to say when the hand is not around your world. Luke accepted the blow. Yes. That stopped her. He stepped into the center of the damaged bay, where Earth staff and Varrin farmers stood among surviving trays. Beyond the glass, the first council shuttle descended through morning cloud, silver and clean. Luke looked at Mara, then Orin, then Nemi. "I can hold the order for a few hours," he said. "Helen can make them follow every procedure they wrote. Rachel can keep the survivors alive that long. But I will not decide what happens to your last seed." Orin's hand tightened around the lockbox. Luke continued, "If you tell me to stop, I stop. We will fight for your safety another way. If you tell me to continue, we continue knowing Earth may pay for it, Greenhaven may pay for it, and some of this field will still die." Mara looked toward the council shuttle. "And if we continue, then we plant what you choose to plant," Luke said, "and I stand between this field and anyone who comes to erase it before it gets the chance to speak." Nemi stepped forward. "The clover." Everyone looked at her. She swallowed. The living trays. They were near the earth clover. The roots listened to each other. Rachel turned slowly toward the records. "She's right." Orin rose from his stool. "Not listened. Answered." Mara stared at him. The old farmer opened the lockbox with shaking hands. Inside lay the cloth bag. He held it as if it weighed more than his bones. "The oldest lines were not meant to grow alone," he said. "When our ancestors crossed ash lands, they planted beside whatever small things still lived. The root learned the ground by touching another root. Helix removed that from the records because a seed that learns cannot be owned for long." Rachel's eyes went wide. "If the original line bonds with an earth repair crop, it may shed the lock," Orin said. "Or it may die." Mara closed her eyes. The council shuttle settled outside with a low hum. Helen's comm began to flash with official demands. Luke said nothing. This was not his seed. At last Mara opened her eyes. "We came to Earth because every other door closed," she said. "If we leave now, our children will learn that doors close even when opened." She looked at Orin. "How many?" Orin opened the cloth bag. 12. 12 seeds. The last original seeds of Astorvale. Mara touched Nemi's hair. "We plant 6. Orin inhaled sharply. 6 live for the future," Mara said. 6 risk for the future. We do not bury all of yesterday to reach tomorrow." Orin bowed his head. "Then plant with clean hands." They did. Helen delayed the council inspectors with regulations about contamination suits, chain of custody, local hazard review, and 3 different categories of agricultural quarantine that Luke suspected she had not cared about until that morning. Rachel stabilized Bay 2 and prepared beds with earth clover, fungal mesh, and filtered soil from the surviving Varrin trays. Luke kept the water moving through the old lunar filters, coaxing pressure from pipes that groaned like old men. Mara selected the 6 seeds. Orin sang under his breath as he placed each one in her palm. Nemi held the tray of earth clover cuttings like a sacred bowl. Counselor Darren Quill arrived just before noon. He was taller than Luke expected, with silver skin and the careful posture of a man who had spent his life in rooms where nobody sweated. His environmental cloak had not yet dried from the rain. "This site is under containment," Quill said. Luke stood at the entrance to Bay 2. Behind him, Mara knelt at the first prepared bed. "I know," Luke said. "Then you understand that further propagation is prohibited." "I understand the order." Quill's eyes narrowed. "That is not the same thing." "No." Helen stepped between them with a tablet. "Counselor, under Earth emergency agricultural law, destruction of active relief material requires verification of immediate hazard. Biological ownership disputes fall under council authority. Ownership is not hazard." Quill looked past her to the beds. "You are creating a precedent you do not comprehend." Luke said, "You are trying to destroy evidence you have not looked at." Quill's expression hardened. "Mr. Harlan, this is not a moral theater." Luke's voice stayed even. "No, it is a greenhouse. That is why I am listening to the farmers." Mara pressed the first seed into soil beside the clover. Quill moved as if to step forward. Luke did not touch him. He simply did not move aside. Security shifted behind Quill. For one long second, the room held its breath. Helen said quietly, "Counselor, if you force entry without completing the hazard review I filed, Earth will publish the procedural breach before you finish crossing the room." Quill looked at her. You would risk relief access for this. Helen's face was pale but steady. I'm risking relief access because if hunger could be licensed, none of our relief access means what we pretend it means. Mara planted the second seed, then the third. Luke watched Quill hear the small sound behind him. Soil moving. Breath held. A child whispering to roots. Quill did not stop them. He did not approve. He did not concede. He stood in the doorway with all the cold weight of the system behind him and waited for the plants to fail. The contaminated plants they had separated earlier failed all at once. Their roots blackened and the toxin stored inside them released back into the bed. Alarms rose across the panel. Rakil spoon. If that reaches the shared drainage, we lose Bay 2. Luke moved. Shut the cross drains. They are manual at the floor ports. I know. He grabbed a mask and went into Bay 1. The air inside was bitter. His eyes watered. Dead Varrin plants sagged in rows, leaves gray, soil bubbling faintly around their roots. He dropped to his knees at the first floor port and cranked the wheel shut. The metal stuck. He put his weight into it until his shoulder burned. Mara entered behind him with a mask half sealed. Get out, Luke said. No, this air is bad. So is losing the field. They worked together, moving from port to port. Tobin joined, then 2 Earth staff. They shut the drains by hand, while Rachel rerouted flow from the control panel. Luke's gloves slicked with contaminated water. Mara coughed hard, but kept turning the wheel. At the last port, the handle snapped. Luke looked at the rising line of dark water moving toward the shared channel. Tools, Mara called. No time. Luke wedged a metal tray into the channel and braced his boot against it. Rachel, reverse pressure. That could blow the old line. Better the line than Bay 2. The pipe screamed. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the dark water pulled back. A pipe burst under the floor with a dull thud, showering Luke's legs with cold water, but the shared drain cleared. Bay 2 stayed clean. Luke leaned against the wall, breathing through the mask. Mara sat on the floor opposite him, coughing, eyes wet from the fumes. You are foolish, she said. Often, you could have sent us in. They were our plants. They were under my roof. She looked at him through the fog mask. And we are. Luke met her eyes. Under it, too. By dawn, only a third of the original test crop remained. Bay 1 was dead. Bay 3 was mostly lost. The 6 original seeds in Bay 2 had produced 4 roots, and 2 of those roots had bonded with the clover mesh without triggering the Odrin lock. Small survival. Enormous meaning. Rachel ran the first full soil analysis just after sunrise. The bed around the bonded roots showed toxin capture, salt reduction, and microbial recovery. The data was not theoretical. It was live. Helen made it public. Not as a speech, not as a demand, as a relief station incident report with timestamps, soil readings, water records, images, and video of Varrin farmers doing the work. The report showed the poison water, the containment order, the surviving root, the restored soil. It did not accuse the Odrin Empire in dramatic language. It did something worse. It made the truth hard to ignore. Varrin tried to spin it within the hour. Earth's unauthorized experiment has produced contaminated data under emotionally charged conditions. Then the public clips began to spread. Nemi listening to a seed. Mara planting beside earth clover. Luke and Varrin farmers shutting poison drains by hand. Orin weeping over a living root. The story changed faster than council procedure could catch up. Not everywhere. Not completely. Systems with licensed seed contracts stayed silent. Odrin allies called it misinformation. Helix Grain Authority issued a statement so dense even Helen laughed once without humor. But relief workers watched. Farmers watched. Settlements that had signed similar seed contracts watched. People who knew hunger by the calendar watched. Counselor Quill returned to Bay 2 at noon. He looked older. Saving Krell appeared with him by secure projection, his polished calm showing hairline cracks. The material remains Odrin property, Krell said. Mara stood beside the living bed. She had washed her hands, but soil remained under her nails. This root was born on Earth beside Earth clover from seed your lock tried to kill. The origin line is Odrin registered. Orin lifted his head. The origin line is older than your empire. Krell ignored him. Counselor Quill, you have authority to enforce containment. Quill looked at the bed, at the data, at the child standing near Rachel, holding a sealed vial of new soil like treasure. Containment is intended to prevent harm, Quill said slowly. Krell's eyes sharpened. An unauthorized propagation is harm. Quill did not look at him. The live data suggests the greater harm may be destruction of evidence. The room went very still. Luke did not smile. Helen did not move. Mara's breathing changed. Krell said, Counselor. Quill turned toward the projection. The destruction order is suspended pending independent review. Sorna Flat's relocation is an internal Odra matter. Perhaps, Quill said. But the claim that the region is agriculturally non-viable has now been challenged by biological evidence under Council observation. Krell's polished calm finally broke. You are allowing Earth to manufacture rebellion. Luke stepped forward. No, we allowed farmers to plant. Krell looked at him with real hatred then. Luke held his gaze. For once, the silence did not belong to the Empire. It took 6 weeks for the first free seed to form. Not a field of gold. Not a perfect harvest. Greenhaven did not become a miracle in one season. Most of the Varrin test crop had died. 2 of the original seeds failed after root split. 1 living plant remained weak and produced nothing. Only 1 plant, the one Nemi had watched over every morning, reached full seed. Its stalk was thin. Its leaves were a muted green edged with copper. Its roots held the soil around them in a dark, sweet-smelling web. When Rachel tested the bed, the toxin levels had dropped again. When Orin touched the stalk, his hand shook. Mara would not let anyone harvest early. We wait until it lets go, she said. Luke respected that. On the morning the seed pods dried, the entire South Annex gathered. Earth staff, Varrin farmers, Helen Price, Rachel Bloom. Even Counselor Quill stood at the edge, officially present as an observer, unofficially quiet as a man attending something he did not yet have language for. Orin sang the seed song. It was not beautiful in the way train music was beautiful. His voice cracked. He lost breath twice. Mara joined him. Then Tovin. Then the others. Nemi sang last, small and steady. Luke did not understand the words, but he understood the work of them. Songs could hold instructions. Songs could hold maps. Songs could hold grief until grief became seed. Mara opened the first pod. Inside were 27 seeds. Only 27. Orin laughed and cried at the same time. Nemi looked offended by the small number. That is not many. Luke crouched beside her. It is more than none. She thought about that. Then she nodded seriously. More than yesterday. That too. They divided the seeds at a clean table in Seed Vault 2, the same vault where Luke had found them on the floor. The circle was small. Mira, Orin, Nemi, Luke, Rachel, Helen. No cameras at first. Mara had insisted the first division be done before witnesses, not spectators. Orin placed 9 seeds in a small earth glass vial. For Greenhaven, he said, so this place never has to say it only gave. He placed 9 in a gray fiber pouch. For the next season, the final 9 he placed on the table and covered with his hand. For Astervale, Mara said. Helen looked at Luke, then at Mara. The routes are still watched. Mara nodded. We know. We can get them into a medical soil shipment, Rachel said, disguised as microbe cultures. Helen gave her a look. Rachel lifted her chin. I said can, not should. Luke looked at Helen. Helen looked tired enough to be honest. A council review buys us time, not freedom. If those seeds move, Odrin will call it smuggling. Mara's hand closed around the pouch. They called hunger relocation. They called farmers property. Their words have already done enough. Luke said, if we send them carefully. Not as a stunt. Not as revenge. As relief. Helen was silent for a long moment. Then she took the pouch. I know a route. Luke raised an eyebrow. Helen slipped the pouch into her coat. I have been running relief longer than you have been breaking my regulations, Luke. Rachel smiled. Mara turned to Luke. Will this hurt Earth more? He did not lie. Maybe. Then why does your Earth keep choosing this? Luke looked around the vault. At the shelves of seed packed for worlds Earth might never see. At Helen, standing with forbidden hope in her pocket. At Rachel, wiping her eyes and pretending not to. At Nemi, holding the Greenhaven vial like a sunrise. Earth does not always choose right, he said. But when we remember who we are, we do not ask whether the abandoned are convenient. Mara studied him. Then she stepped to the crack in the floor where Luke had first seen her kneeling. A few old earth seeds still lay trapped deep in the wood, unreachable, perhaps dead, perhaps waiting. She looked at them for a long moment. Then she returned to the table and placed the Greenhaven vial in Luke's hand. At the beginning, she had begged for seeds from the floor. Now she gave seeds to Earth. Luke accepted the vial with both hands. No one clapped. It would have been too small a sound. Outside, the south fields glowed in afternoon light. Rain clouds gathered again over Greenhaven Station, and beyond them, somewhere past the blue sky, council ships and odor monitors still watched. The galaxy had not become kind. The laws had not become just. The Empire had not confessed. But in a sealed pouch moving quietly through a relief route, 9 seeds began the long journey home. On Astorvale, in the Sorna Flats, there were still people waiting beside fields they had been told were dead. Soon, if the route held, someone would open a package meant for soil medicine and find a handful of seeds that no Odrin lock could command. Maybe they would plan at night. Maybe the first route would fail. Maybe soldiers would come. Maybe the Empire would poison water again, block roads again, write new laws again. But maybe a child on Astorvale would lift one of those seeds to her ear and hear something answer. At Greenhaven, Luke stood with Mara at the edge of the new bed. The free plant's cut stalk remained in the soil, surrounded by earth clover and Varrin root mesh. Nemi had placed a small marker beside it, written in careful English letters. First free seed. Mara looked at the marker. It sounds too small. Luke shook his head. Most things that change a field start small. She glanced at him. And sanctuary? He looked across the greenhouse, where earth workers and Varrin farmers were cleaning trays for the next planting. Not heroes in a speech. Not symbols on a banner. Just tired people preparing soil. Sanctuary starts when someone opens a door, Luke said. It becomes real. When they keep it open after the storm comes in. Mara looked toward the sky. The storm is not over. No, Luke said. She nodded, as if that answer suited her better than comfort. Behind them, Nemi ran to Rachel with a soil reading, shouting that the bed was warmer than yesterday. Oren scolded her for running near seed trays, then followed as fast as his old legs allowed. Mara watched them. For the first time since Luke had found her in the vault, her face held something that did not have to defend itself. Not joy, not yet, but the beginning of room for it. You did not save us by feeding us, she said. Luke looked at her. You gave us a place to become farmers again. He thought of his grandfather's flooded field, of pickup trucks arriving with seed bags, of the simple mercy of giving someone tomorrow instead of only today. No, he said. We gave you a place where nobody could stop you long enough for you to show us who you already were. Mara reached into her pocket and took out one last seed. Not from the harvest count. One of the dead earth seeds from the night they arrived, polished now by her thumb. I kept this, she said. Luke looked at it. That one was dead. Yes. Why keep it? So I remember the difference. She pressed it into his palm. Luke closed his fingers around the dead seed. It was light, almost nothing, but it carried the whole shape of the story. A dead seed from the floor. A living seed in the vault. A field saved only partly. A people not restored all at once, but no longer erased. Above Greenhaven, the rain began again. This time, when it hit the glass, the new roots were ready to drink. The Varrin had come to Greenhaven as people accused of stealing seeds. They stayed long enough to prove that a field was not dead just because an empire wrote the word dead on paper. And when Mara Van returned to Seed Vault 2, she did not kneel. She stood. She placed the first pouch of free Varrin seed on the table. Not as payment, not as tribute, but as proof. Earth had given them shelter. Now, they had something living to give back. Some of those seeds would stay at Greenhaven. Some would grow next season. And some would travel home to Astorvale, hidden inside relief crates, carried by hands that still remembered how to plant in the dark. Because sanctuary is not just a locked door against danger. Sometimes sanctuary is a field, a cup of clean water, a hand that refuses to let go, and one human being standing between a starving people and a galaxy that had already decided they were not worth saving. If this story stayed with you, please leave a like, share it with someone who enjoys science fiction with heart, and subscribe for more stories about humanity standing where no one else will. And tell me in the comments, if a single seed could carry the future of an entire people, how far should someone go to protect it? Thank you for listening. Until the next story, take care of yourself, and remember this. The smallest life can become the strongest answer when someone is brave enough to let it grow.